Bram Stoker's journey to creating Dracula unfolded over 7 intense years of exploration into European folklore and the haunting tales of vampires that thread through Eastern European culture. His intrigue was particularly captured by the blood-soaked legend of Vlad III, known to history as Vlad the Impaler, a 15th century noble with a fearsome reputation for impaling his enemies. When Dracula was unleashed upon the world in 1897, it didn't just launch a novel, it ignited an undying legacy. This wasn't merely another addition to the horror genre, it was the genesis of the vampire archetype that has dominated Western culture ever since. Stoker's novel, a masterpiece of terror and suspense, achieved this through a pioneering narrative technique, presenting the story through diary entries, letters, and newspaper articles, creating an eerily realistic and multifaceted exploration of themes such as desire, fear, and the clash of civilizations. Since its first publication, Dracula has never been out of print, translated into dozens of languages, and serving as the dark muse for countless adaptations across all forms of media. Exploring the potential origins of Bram Stoker's version of Dracula yields several compelling theories. While Stoker himself offered limited direct insight into Dracula's genesis, scholarly analysis and historical context provide a basis for speculation. Theory 1. Vlad the Impaler. One widely held belief is that Stoker drew inspiration from Vlad III Dracula, also known as Vlad the Impaler, a 15th century Wallachian prince known for his brutal methods of punishing enemies, including impalement. Vlad's savagery, combined with his moniker Dracula, meaning son of the dragon or son of the devil in Romanian, likely contributed to Stoker's character. Theory 2. Irish folklore. Another theory suggests that Stoker may have been influenced by Irish folklore, specifically the legend of Archetype, a 5th century chieftain known for his tyranny and supposed dark magical practices. According to folklore, Archetype was said to have risen from the grave multiple times until he was finally killed with a sword made of yew wood and buried upside down, an act believed to finally quell his supernatural powers. Theory 3. Literary inspirations. This third theory considers the broader context of vampire fiction and European superstitions that predated Stoker's work. The 18th and 19th centuries saw a surge in vampire literature in Europe, with works like The Vampire by John Polidori and Carmilla by Sheridan Le Fanu shaping the vampire narrative in popular culture. Stoker was undoubtedly aware of these stories and the public's fascination with vampires, which likely influenced his creation of Dracula. Additionally, the phrase, "For the dead travel fast," from Gottfried August Berger's ballad, Lenore, is directly quoted in Dracula, indicating Stoker's literary inspirations and his intent to anchor his novel within the existing vampire lore. Exploring the vampire origins of Bram Stoker's iconic character revealed a fascinating confluence of historical figures, local folklore, and literary influences that may have shaped the creation. However, the true origin to his becoming a vampire remains a mystery. Here we examine several theories. Theory 1. Pact with the devil. A common theme in vampire mythology is the idea of a pact with the devil, or a demonic entity, where a human exchanges their soul for immortality, power, or knowledge. Given Dracula's profound knowledge of the occult and alchemy, as mentioned in his description as having studied at the Scholomance, a school reputed to teach the black arts under the devil's direct supervision, it's plausible that Dracula's transformation was the result of a dark pact. This theory aligns with the character's deep involvement with magic and the supernatural, suggesting he sought out vampirism as a means to gain power or eternal life. Theory 2. Curse for his sins. Another theory could be that Dracula's transformation was a curse placed upon him as punishment for his sins in life. The novel describes Dracula as a warrior who fought against the Turks, implying a violent past. Additionally, his pride and perhaps acts of great cruelty could have attracted a curse that condemned him to live eternally as a vampire. This notion of vampirism as a curse reflects folklore where beings are turned into vampires as divine or supernatural retribution for wrongdoing, living in an eternal state of damnation. Theory 3. Victim of another vampire. A third possibility is that Dracula was turned into a vampire by being bitten by another vampire, a common motif in vampire lore. While the novel does not mention any such event directly, this theory cannot be entirely discounted given the mysterious nature of Dracula's past and the wide array of powers he possesses, which could have been transmitted to him through the bite of a powerful vampire. This method of becoming a vampire is widely recognized in folklore and suggests a continuation of an ancient and malevolent lineage. Primary and secondary characters. Count Dracula, the central figure, a centuries-old vampire with complex motives, powers, and secrets. Jonathan Harker, a London-based solicitor who travels to Transylvania, becomes one of Dracula's prisoners, but escapes. Mina Murray, later Harker, Jonathan's fiancée who becomes a target of Dracula's obsession. Lucy Westenra, Mina's best friend, who becomes one of Dracula's victims. Professor Abraham Van Helsing, a Dutch doctor with a deep knowledge of vampires who leads the fight against Dracula. Dr. John Seward, a doctor and former suitor of Lucy who runs an insane asylum. Quincy Morris, an American friend of Lucy's suitors and part of the group fighting Dracula. Arthur Holmwood, later Lord Godalming, Lucy's fiancé and a key member of the group opposing Dracula. Renfield, a patient at Dr. Seward's insane asylum, Renfield exhibits a fascination with consuming life to obtain its vitality, a reflection of Dracula's influence over him. His loyalty to Dracula and subsequent attempts to warn the protagonists of Dracula's powers highlight the tragic conflict within his madness. The Brides, the three vampire women residing in Castle Dracula, represent both temptation and the perversion of traditional feminine virtues. They embody sensuality and the predatory nature of vampires, serving as a dark mirror to the novel's more virtuous female characters. The Coach Driver. The mysterious coach driver who transports Jonathan Harker to Castle Dracula is later revealed to be Dracula himself. This encounter showcases Dracula's initial manipulation and control, setting the tone for his ominous presence throughout the novel. Throughout the novel, the Count's appearance undergoes significant transformations, reflecting his consumption of blood and the progress of his plans. Initially, Dracula is described as an elderly man with white hair and a mustache, but as he feeds and grows stronger in England, his hair darkens, his complexion becomes more youthful, and his physical vigor increases. This changing appearance not only signifies his regained strength, but also serves as a sinister indicator of his predatory nature and the direct impact of his actions on his victims. The novel's two primary locations. Castle Dracula, nestled in the Carpathian Mountains, is his stronghold of horror and mystery. It harbors over 100 secret passages reflecting the Count's enigmatic nature. The castle's soil, essential for Dracula's power, establishes a deep, unshakable connection to his homeland, vital for his rest and regeneration. The presence of the brides within the castle adds layers of dread, as they epitomize the seductive yet terrifying aspects of Dracula's world and further enhance the already ominous atmosphere at Castle Dracula. London, the vibrant heart of the Victorian era, becomes the new hunting ground for Dracula, who is drawn to its teeming life for fresh victims. The city's dense fog and winding streets offer perfect cover for the vampire's activities, blending ancient evil with modern chaos. Here, Dracula's presence brings a shadow over London, merging the terror of the old world with the pulse of the new, perfectly foreshadowed in the Voyage of the Demeter. Dracula is structured as a series of diary entries, letters, newspaper articles, and ship's log entries called epistolary format, which lends a sense of realism and immediacy to the story. It begins with Jonathan Harker, a young English solicitor visiting Count Dracula in Transylvania to assist with a real estate purchase in England. Harker soon realizes he is a prisoner in the castle and witnesses horrifying events, leading to his discovery that Dracula is a vampire. The novel then shifts to England, where Dracula arrives and begins to prey upon Lucy Westenra, leading to her death and transformation into a vampire. Her friends and family, including her fiancé Arthur Holmwood, her friend Mina Murray, Harker's fiancé, the Dr. John Seward, and Professor Abraham Van Helsing band together to battle Dracula. In the climactic finale, Dracula is confronted by the group led by Van Helsing near his castle in Transylvania. As the sun sets, Quincy Morris stabs Dracula in the heart with a Bowie knife, while Jonathan Harker slashes at Dracula's throat with a kukri. This dual assault ensures Dracula's body crumbles into dust, effectively ending his reign of terror and releasing him from his immortal curse. Timeline and key events. The arrival of Jonathan Harker. Late April, Jonathan Harker, a young English solicitor, travels to Transylvania to assist Count Dracula with a real estate transaction. Upon arrival at Castle Dracula, Harker is struck by Dracula's courteous manners, but soon realizes the Count's sinister nature. Early May, Harker discovers he is a prisoner and witnesses Dracula's supernatural abilities, including scaling the castle's walls. He encounters 3 female vampires from whom Dracula protects him, indicating a possessive or controlling aspect of Dracula's nature. Dracula's journey to England. Late May, Dracula leaves Transylvania for England aboard the Demeter, bringing with him boxes of Transylvanian soil, essential for his survival. The voyage is marked by mysterious deaths among the crew, culminating in the ship's arrival in Whitby with no living crew aboard, showcasing Dracula's ruthlessness. In England, August. Dracula arrives in England and begins to exert his influence over Lucy Westenra, who becomes his first victim, demonstrating his predatory nature and the theme of corruption of innocence. September. Lucy's transformation into a vampire and subsequent death highlights Dracula's power to corrupt and transform, challenging Victorian notions of purity and the finality of death. The battle against Dracula. Late September, Mina Harker falls under Dracula's influence, marking a personal attack on Harker and bringing the battle against Dracula to a more personal level. October. The group, led by Van Helsing, begins to fight back, hunting down Dracula's boxes of soil and confronting him directly, showcasing the clash between modernity and ancient evil. Dracula's return to Transylvania. November. The chase leads back to Transylvania, culminating in a final confrontation where Dracula is ultimately destroyed, but not without significant cost to the group, reflecting themes of sacrifice and redemption. Powers and abilities. Shape-shifting. Dracula's ability to transform extends beyond the commonly cited forms of a bat and a wolf. He can also turn into mist or fog, allowing him to infiltrate secure places and escape unnoticed. This power symbolizes his ability to penetrate societal and personal boundaries, making him a nearly inescapable predator. Control over animals. His dominion over creatures of the night, such as wolves and rats, is emblematic of his connection to the darker aspects of nature, suggesting an ancient and primal force at odds with human civilization. Hypnotism and mind control. Dracula can exert his will over others, bending them to his desires. This power is particularly evident in his interactions with characters like Renfield and Mina, reflecting the Victorian anxieties about the loss of self-control and the influence of degenerate forces. Superhuman strength and speed. These attributes make Dracula an overpowering physical presence, capable of feats far beyond human capability, reinforcing his status as a being beyond human. Immunity to conventional means of harm. Virtually impervious to conventional injury, Dracula's resistance to aging and damage underscores his supernatural otherness and the difficulty of combating such a creature with human means. necromancy. The ability to summon and command the dead links Dracula to the ancient and dark arts, portraying him as a master over death itself. Environmental manipulation. Implied through his journey from Transylvania to England, Dracula can summon mists and control the weather to some extent, using the elements to cloak his movements and enhance his menacing presence. Flying and wall crawling. While not explicitly described flying in the form of a bat, the ability to scale castle walls and move with ease in various forms suggests a kind of agility and mobility that borders on flight. This skill enhances his predatory nature, making escape from him nearly impossible. Psychic abilities and mind reading. Dracula exhibits a form of telepathy or mind reading, particularly in his ability to sense when his victims are vulnerable or when his adversaries are plotting against him. This is seen in his strategic moves to counter the protagonist's plans, suggesting a deep, intuitive understanding of human thought and behavior. Alchemy and sorcery. Dracula's knowledge of alchemy and the occult, hinted at through his library and the observations of Harker, speaks to his long life and pursuit of forbidden knowledge. This aspect of his character ties him to the Renaissance man's ideal, but perverted towards dark ends. Blood imbibing. Central to the vampire myth, Dracula's consumption of blood is his means of sustenance and rejuvenation. Through this act, he not only gains strength and youth, but also the knowledge and memories of his victims, suggesting a form of psychic consumption that makes him a repository of centuries' worth of human experience. These powers and abilities make Dracula a near-omnipotent adversary. His capabilities extend beyond mere physical predation, touching on the psychological, environmental, and metaphysical, which is why he remains one of literature's most enduring and terrifying figures. In the novel, while the Count possesses formidable powers that make him a fearsome predator, he is not without his vulnerabilities. These weaknesses are crucial to the plot, as they provided the means by which the protagonist combated and ultimately defeated Dracula. Reliance on Transylvanian soil. Dracula must rest in his native soil to regain his strength, which is why he transports boxes of earth from Transylvania to England. This requirement ties him to a physical location and allows his enemies to target his resting places. Sunlight. While sunlight does not kill Dracula, it weakens him significantly, limiting his powers and his ability to regenerate. This vulnerability forces Dracula to operate under the cover of night, adding a temporal constraint to his activities. Garlic, a traditional folkloric repellent against vampires. Garlic is used by the characters to ward off Dracula. It is placed around the necks of potential victims and in windows and doorways to prevent his entry. Sacred objects. Objects of Christian significance, such as crucifixes and consecrated wafers, are potent deterrents against Dracula. These items can cause him harm and prevent him from accessing certain areas, reflecting the novel's theme of the battle between good and evil. Running water. Dracula cannot cross running water, such as rivers or streams, under his own power unless at the slack or the flood of the tide. This limitation can be used strategically to corner or escape from him. Must be invited. In one of the novel's key supernatural rules, Dracula cannot enter a home unless invited by someone within. This restriction provides a form of protection for the protagonists and symbolizes the vampire's need for social compliance to gain power. Decapitation and staking. The traditional method of killing a vampire, involving a stake through the heart followed by decapitation, is the ultimate way to destroy Dracula. This method, combined with the scattering of his ashes, ensures that Dracula cannot return from the dead. Hawthorn. Though not as prominently featured as other weaknesses, the novel implies that hawthorn, part of the sacred and thorny plants, can harm or repel vampires, used in the final confrontation with Dracula. Dracula's Guest, 1914. Dracula's Guest, Often considered a deleted first chapter of Bram Stoker's seminal work, Dracula is a short story that was published posthumously in 1914 by Stoker's widow. The narrative follows an Englishman, presumably Jonathan Harker, though unnamed in the story, on his journey to Transylvania. Set against the backdrop of Walpurgis Night, a time filled with dark folklore and superstition, the protagonist experiences eerie and supernatural occurrences as he ventures into a landscape marked by fear and mystery. The story begins with the Englishman's coach journey being cut short due to the ominous weather and local superstitions surrounding the night before May Day, leading him to explore a desolate and haunted landscape on his own. Throughout his solitary journey, the protagonist encounters various elements of Gothic horror, including a deserted village, a terrifying storm, and an encounter with a mysterious and menacing figure, which foreshadows the events of Dracula. He stumbles upon a tomb of Countess Dolingen of Graz, inscribed with a warning and a curse, and experiences supernatural phenomena that hint at the vampiric. The story reaches its climax with the protagonist being saved from a potentially fatal encounter by the intervention of a supernatural force. Legacy. Influence on vampire lore. Dracula solidified the modern image of the vampire in Western culture. Many tropes associated with vampires today, such as their being repelled by garlic, their lack of reflection, and their need to be invited into a residence, either originated from or were popularized by Stoker's novel. The legacy of Bram Stoker's Dracula is vast and varied, extending far beyond the original 1897 novel into virtually every form of media. Film. The 1931 film starring Bela Lugosi as Dracula is perhaps the most iconic adaptation, setting the standard for vampire portrayals in cinema after Nosferatu, with Lugosi's charismatic and menacing performance. This film introduced many to the character and established visual and thematic elements that would become synonymous with Dracula. Following this, Christopher Lee's portrayal of Dracula in the Hammer film production series, starting in 1958, redefined the character with a more dynamic and visceral interpretation, contributing significantly to the vampire genre. Francis Ford Coppola's 1992 film, Bram Stoker's Dracula, sought to return to the novel's roots while adding a romantic twist, highlighting the tragic aspects of Dracula's character and his quest for lost love. Television. Television has also embraced Dracula, with adaptations ranging from faithful renditions to loose interpretations that place the Count in new contexts. The 2013 NBC series Dracula reimagined Dracula as an American entrepreneur seeking revenge against those who wronged him centuries earlier. More recently, the BBC and Netflix co-produced Dracula 2020 miniseries, which combines elements of horror, humor, and drama. Many other television series have been produced and continue to reinvent and further the mythos. Comics and graphic novels. In the realm of comics and graphic novels, Dracula has been a prevalent figure, appearing in various publishers' lines, including Marvel Comics and IDW Publishing. These adaptations and stories have ranged from direct adaptations of Stoker's novel to unique stories where Dracula interacts with superheroes, other literary characters, or finds himself in completely new narratives. The visual medium allows for a unique exploration of the character's horror and allure, blending Gothic aesthetics with modern storytelling techniques. Video games. Video games have not shied away from the legend of Dracula either, with the Castlevania series being the most notable example. Beginning in 1986, Castlevania has become a cornerstone of gaming, with its lore deeply rooted in the Dracula mythos, albeit with significant liberties taken to fit the medium's interactive nature. Players often take on the role of vampire hunters battling Dracula and his minions, exploring themes of heroism, legacy, and struggle across generations. Dracula has gone on to become an iconic figure in horror, embodying the fears and anxieties of the Victorian era concerning sexuality, invasion, and disease, while also speaking to universal themes of life, death, and immortality. The character has been interpreted in numerous ways, from a symbol of the ultimate outsider to a tragic figure doomed to eternal life. The character still remains popular and instantly recognizable to this very day, and can find himself hero, villain, and even an odd mix of both. If you like this video, then like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.